When the Civil War began in April of 1861, most New Mexicans didn't know what to think. First ruled by Spain and then Mexico, New Mexico had only been a part of the United States for 12 years, since their annexation after the Mexican-American War. Because the climate and soil wouldn't support large-scale cotton or tobacco farming, there were very few African-American slaves in New Mexico, probably less than a dozen at the time the war began. In contrast, there were at least 600 Indian slaves in the territory. Most were from the nomadic tribes, Navajos, Apaches, others captured in the raids and reprisals that had been a constant since the Spanish colonists first arrived. These slaves most commonly worked as domestic servants and sheep herders. The Hispanic population did not trust their neighbors to the east. Texas had invaded New Mexico in 1841 and again in 1843. Texans still claimed that its boundary extended all the way to the Rio Grande, halving the size of New Mexico. So, in early 1861, when Texas overwhelmingly voted to join the Confederacy, much of New Mexico's population decided to side with the Union. Anglo-Americans in New Mexico were divided into two camps. Those in the northern part of New Mexico had strong ties to the Union because of trade along the Santa Fe Trail. Settlers in the southern part of New Mexico, particularly in the region opened up by the Gadsden Purchase, had much closer ties to the south. The army in New Mexico was divided too. Many of the men who served had been raised in the South and chose to fight for the Confederacy when the split occurred. Among them was the man who was the commander of the Department of New Mexico, Colonel William W. Loring, a career soldier who had lost an arm during the Mexican-American War. Shortly before he resigned, he announced to the men under him, "The South is my home, and I am going to throw up my commission and shall join the Southern Army, and each of you can do as you think best." He left and was promptly commissioned a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. By the fall of 1861, he was commanding the Army of the Northwest in Western Virginia. When Loring resigned, the army in New Mexico was left without a leader. The army considered Major Henry Hopkins' sibling, but on the day he was promoted to Major of the 1st Dragoons, he followed Loring in resigning his commission and joining the Confederacy. As he passed through Albuquerque on his way to Texas, Sibley opened the window of the stagecoach he was riding in and yelled to a couple of soldiers, "Boys, I am your worst enemy." Colonel Edward R.S. Canby of the 10th U.S. Infantry was finally picked to run the department. Canby was a cautious leader who knew that his troops were already spread too thin in the large, sparsely populated territory. When he was ordered to send all of his regular infantry to Kansas and raise 2 New Mexico regiments as replacements, he grew worried. The withdrawal of so many troops encouraged increased raids on settlements by Apaches and Navajos. He also feared a Confederate invasion from Texas. Although Adam Reacher, the New Mexico territorial governor, was a Democrat from South Carolina, he refused to support secession. He called out the territorial militia. His successor, Henry Connally, continued the efforts. Their recruiting refrain, "The Texans are coming back to take your land," worked. By the end of 1861, 3,500 local Hispanos had enlisted in the U.S. Army. In February 1862, with the Confederate invasion underway in earnest, all 5 regiments of New Mexico volunteers were sent to Fort Craig, south of Socorro. The stage was set for the Battle of Val Verde. I'm Jennifer Bohnhoff. The north end of that black mesa behind me is where the Battle of Val Verde took place. You can read more about it in my middle grade novel, Where Duty Calls.